So I think that my research on Marshall McLuhan, specifically on his concept of a scholastic age, the scriptural age, or the scribal age, if you will, is done for now. The similarities that he pinpoints between the digital age of the acoustic cavern, whereby electronic media surrounds us from all around, creating this form of Platonic cave where consumers are basically scammed into believing that electronic shadows and avatars are actually real. So basically electronic epoch, which etherealizes and swallows up the hardware, creating this world of pure subtle matters, whereby there is no such thing as physical linearity and sequentiality anymore. It basically retrieves the pre-literate oral acoustic space. And the distinction that he makes between oral and written paradigms is very important here, because the oral paradigm is instantaneous because the ear doesn't locate or fixate objects in a three-dimensional space as it is conceived in Renaissance, where there is a fixed point of view which comes forth as a result of eyes gazing faculty, whereby eyes can basically fixate on one particular thing, whereby that particular thing becomes a figure and everything else becomes a ground. And you get a form of Heideggerian deworlding, where specific objects are basically uprooted and decontextualized from their contextual nexus, and they are examined on an XY coordinate system. XY coordinate system, I think, being the best symbol for the visual age brought forth by Western consciousness structure. Yes, I also forgot to say that the thing about the XY coordinate system that I love about is that basically it harbors all the essential markers of the Western mental consciousness structure. So the first thing is that you have quadrants, 4 quadrants, pointing to the sectorialization, abstract categorization of the Western mind. Then you have a phenomenon termed a cognitive decoupling. A cognitive decoupling being this basically property, capacity of hyper-intellectuals to leave the body and the context and the background, the Heideggerian earth, at the door when doing science or when engaging with standardized tests. As a type of person who has very high IQ, someone who can completely forget about the curvilinear world of context and enter into the world of abstract ideas, where there are only right angles or acute angles, where everything can be quantified. So cognitive decoupling is a power of decontextualization. And during the Soviet Union, Luria and other neuropsychologists made such tests in Uzbekistan, where they showcased that Uzbek people didn't have this capacity of cognitive decoupling, whereby, for example, when they were asked to, let's say, talk about roundness and round shapes, they would always talk about moon, the plate, or a ball, but they didn't have a concept of a circle that was decoupled or divorced from the round shapes themselves. So the cognitive decoupling thing is one major aspect of Cartesian phase-based XY coordinate system. So we have sectorialization with 4 quadrants, we have cognitive decoupling, you don't have a coordinate system in real life, which is curvilinear, right? So you have cognitive decoupling, then you have homogeneity and continuity, where basically this coordinate system is infinite and connected and uniform. The uniformity of nature, again, one of the major transcendental properties of a Western mind. And then the most interesting one, you have plus signs going in the right-hand side, and you have minus signs going in the left-hand side. Why is this the case? Well, because the right side is controlled by the left hemisphere, whereas the left side is controlled by the right hemisphere. So minus is regarded as a non-being, the world of darkness, the world of Heideggerian earth, and the world of the Heideggerian nothing, that is the right hemisphere. And then you have the world of light, the Apollinian order, which is illuminated by the plus signs that go linearly in the right hand side on the coordinate system. So I forgot to mention that, and I think that this coordinate system is a very good, it's basically a mandala of Western consciousness structure. If an alien came forth and asked me to showcase Western consciousness structure in one picture, I would show him an XY coordinate system. This is a museum artifact, I think. I don't actually believe that Mcluhan's theory is correct. I think Mcluhan has a very good intuition. His work is priceless, but the idea that media causes such radical changes is too far-fetched. I think that there is a biological aspect to why Westerners develop this type of hyper-focused Sitzfleisch type world, whereby particular people can hyper-focus on one particular things and basically deworld them from the contextual nexus and investigate them. Marshall McLuhan actually, when he tries to explain this form of intellectual visual world through printing press and phonetic alphabet, he faces some difficulties. For example, when it comes to Russia, which is his Achilles tendon, well, he's like, well, yeah, Russia is still oral, and alphabet takes time, and the phonetic alphabet takes its time to show its effects. It shows that actually there are some other variables, such as ethnic psychology, for example, that plays a role here, and you can't explain everything with media. However, the upshot of this idea is that phonetic alphabet and printing press creates nationalism. It erects walls and creates a protectionist world whereby you have this linear, directive, forward-marching militaries as opposed to the, let's say, the electronic world where everyone bumps into everyone else. Since in the electronic age, you can have a guy from Azerbaijan having a beef with a Canadian because people are uprooted from their geographical spaces, which would naturally limit them and circumscribe their life paths. But now you can have a beef between a Palestinian and a Canadian because this is electronic age is a crowded, disorganized space where everyone basically smashes into everyone else. So we, in the visual age, basically, we were in the paradigm of linearity, sequentiality, and analytic logic. And they are all basically done away with since electronic technology created this acoustic cavern where you're bombarded with electronic information from all around. The other thing that I wanted to say is that basically Dark Ages, the way it is conceived in Western society, is a type of paradigm which is characterized by mass illiteracy. That's what Dark Ages is. And we are in Dark Ages right now because literacy rates are basically plummeting, and the internet is retrieving these tribal wars, dyslexia, ADHD, it retrieves the temperamental, charismatic types. Shorts, for example, which are vertical, and they demand this frenzy and charisma. Pre-literate, pre-civilizational type of charisma, characteristic of Andrew Tate, for example, with this shamanistic aikido, some form of magic consciousness structure, as Jean Gebser puts it. So this is it. And well, there are lots of things that I have nailed down here, and I want to share two things. Okay, one thing is that basically illuminated manuscripts and the stained glasses of the Gothic cathedrals, it repeats the pattern of iPads, electronic technology, and comic books. So you see, according to Marshall Mcluhan, illuminated manuscripts, they were tactile with their heterogeneity, with their, iconotype, structure where you have pictures with colored pictures. They're not for reading, they're for touching. And basically manuscript reflects the comic book structure. This is the one key aspect of Mcluhan's analysis. Then we have got the idea that a manuscript actually that carries a text in its content is not actually a text as we understand it today. Our understanding of text as it is written on a books that are a product of the printing press, this type of text is phlegmatic, black and white, linear and sequential. The manuscript text, on the other hand, according to Mcluhan, is a texture, because the word text comes from texture as in the tapestry, whereby it is a tactile medium which you touch. It comes out of the a natural matrix. The another thing is that Mcluhan basically differentiates two paradigms: the light-on paradigm and the light-through paradigm. So basically, the Dark Age paradigm is the light-through paradigm, whereas the visual age of Gutenbergian paradigm is a light-on paradigm. And as we're going to see, electronic paradigm basically retrieves the light-through structure. And what is light-through? So in the period of Gothic cathedrals, you have stained glasses. And when the light comes from the outside and it travels through the medium of stained glasses, you get this form of illumination that comes from the other world. And illumination here means a type of space which produces its own light, as opposed to being a flat medium on which the light is thrown. And basically, Mcluhan then would say that pointillism and the art of Van Gogh, for example, is a type of art that predicts TV. Because TV and pointillism are basically related, since both of them produce light through little points. And those lights are auto-generated, as opposed to being basically a result of some external source throwing a light on it. However, light-on structures comes forward after the Gutenberg Revolution, where you need an external light, whereby external light helps you to read books, for example. And this brings forth a new understanding of space, where space is a form of container, an objective container which is filled by actions and objects, because light-on type structure creates this understanding of space as a container, as opposed to light-through, which creates its own space. And that's why in Byzantine art and in pre-perspectival art, pre-Renaissance art, every object created its own peculiar space, which then is repeated in a hyperspace type art of conceptual age, of postmodern art, where every object carves out its own space. Also reflected, according to Mcluhan, by Einstein's theory of relativity, where particles basically carve up their own space. You don't have a linear Newtonian space in the age of Einstein's theory of relativity, for example. And John David Ebert then would suggest that iPads, for example, as opposed to Kindles, they reflect this old manuscript type culture, where iPad produces its text through light-through type of structure, where a text comes forth from it, massaging your face, instead of a Kindle or a book where you need an external light on it. So that's that. To summarize my research before I put out a video with my friend Gabriel, I would like to say that the upshot of my research is that Dark Ages It's not an apocalypse, but dark age basically denotes a different consciousness structure. A consciousness structure of the acoustic space, of intense right hemisphere, of temperament, frenzy, oral tradition, and lack of literacy. That's what dark age is. It doesn't necessarily mean some form of violence or, destruction of civilization, but it reflects a change of consciousness structure from linear, literate, and logical to discontinuous, simultaneous, ADHD, dyslexic type. And by the way, here's one thing. Most of the new alpha males who constitute the internal proletariat of the West, internal proletariat being the Arnold Toynbee's concept to describe a part of a society which exists within a society but is not of a society. They feel disenfranchised against the creative elite. Right now, what you have is that you have these alpha males who are all dyslexic, who have all ADDs, they can't control their bodies, and they can't imitate a Western anthrotype, what I would call an anthrotype as opposed to an archetype, the Western anthrotype of a specialized male who exhibits the property of what German people call a Sitzfleisch. Sitzfleisch being this sitting flesh, whereby this Westerners, and to some degree, not to some degree, but even to a further degree, as it turns out, in East Asia, as people are able to sit down and concentrate on one particular task for hours and hours. And now you have a rebellion of this temperamental, jittery, ADD, temperamental / charismatic, voodoo, shamanistic guys against the creative intellectual elite, which they call nerds and geeks. But those nerds and geeks basically were responsible for the greatest civilization of all time. So I guess people will have to make a choice between dyslexic, temperamental, charismatic, somewhat charismatic idiots and actual intellectuals. But unfortunately, right now, neither the elite nor the internal proletariat has actually anything to offer. So it's not the best time for choosing sides. So the solution is to keep an eye on my videos. Okay, so that's it.